wearing your jail jumpsuit today. What's up?
That was a new one. I've never seen that one before.
Neat. Yeah, I thought so too, Ashley. Nice.
I like it.
How do you like that? Isn't it good?
Yeah.
It's great.
I know. Wow, Ashley finally agrees on something. But anyway, welcome everyone. How are we all?
Good. Managing well. Managing well. I think that's a very honest answer for me.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Oh, we've got someone else joining us. Joe Farmer. She's here. Yeah. Sara Bradford's joining as well, but she's having tech issues. So she'll be joining. Welcome back, Richard. How are you? How's he going? See, I just every time.
Richard, where'd you go? We lost your image.
I'm trying to share this to my shows. It's going to be.
Right. Well, we'll let him do that then. We'll let him do that. Yeah, but everyone, please do share this and subscribe if you haven't already. I know Ashley's probably going to pick on me tonight. I ain't got a clue, but we'll try to. But anyway. Well, we're going to be discussing about creating a healthy relationship with autistic kids. So I thought we'd bring Diane, Hudson and Gilly because obviously they're new to this platform. So how are you, ladies?
We're good. I think I'm speaking on behalf of Diane, but good. Happy to be here.
Yes, I will agree. Very good. The hiccups have subsided. I am ready to speak like a speaking human, not a hiccuping human. So.
I thought you were about to say foghorn then, but okay. So, where do we kick off with this? Because obviously none of this is scripted. We'll just go with the flow, don't we? To do with autism and creating that healthy relationship, because I know raising autistic kids is a freaking full-time job. It really is. With having two myself, which possibly three as well with what our youngest is doing. But anyway, what can we do? Because I know things can turn ugly when raising them, especially when they get to the teenage years.
You know, I think it all starts with our own mindsets. And I think when we all can kind of step away maybe from traditional parenting that we might have been raised by, or ideas that might not coincide with society today and what we're offering to our children now. I think that when we realize that all behavior is communication, and the more curious we can be about helping our children, the better that foundation can be laid to start forming that trust relationship, whether speaking or non-speaking. I think that it all relates around that nurturing environment that you provide. Yeah. And hi Diane, love you to death.
Hi, Sara.
Hi guys.
You muted, Dance.
Ugh. What you said there, Sara, was absolutely brilliant. It really, truly was, because when we look at the individual that we are speaking about, because every autistic child is as unique as any possible sunset or sunrise. And when we look at the environment of the person, it's about creating an environment where communication is opened, welcomed, and filled with love on both sides of the equation. So it's very, very powerful. When we can understand what the goal is, then we can begin to understand what we're working towards. If we look at the past, We're going to create the past. We can't do anything from the past. It's gone. The battery charge is gone. It's about looking at the goal that we want. What's the goal? What do you want? You want to create a peaceful home? Be peaceful.
Yeah.
Create that in yourself. Create that in every breathing, walking moment. If you're expecting crisis and chaos, then that's what you're going to be creating based on what you're telling yourself to do.
Yeah, I think self-fulfilling prophecies are definitely very real. And they're hard to avoid when you have kids with autism. I can't speak from personal experience. I mean, to my knowledge, my kids are still very young. I don't think they're autistic, but I work with a lot of autistic kids. That's my niche, and their parents. And what I find is part of the work is, like you're saying, changing the perspective of the parent, which is not easy because it's very hard to raise autistic kids. But I think like the number one thing that has really helped me, like in my work with families, is talking about giving the kid kind of like the benefit of the doubt, because there's just a lot of misunderstanding, especially in public schools where teachers are just not necessarily trained to understand neurodiversity. So understanding like what is the function of the behavior, or why is it that this kid is doing whatever they're doing, instead of labeling them.
Yeah, and that's the problem we've got in today's society, because schools, like obviously with our eldest, he's absolutely phenomenal in his education, especially with maths. Obviously he's 12 years old and he's just been put forward to do his, well, they do IGCSEs now, which I ain't got a clue what they are, but they're basically higher than GCSEs. And obviously the school he's at now, he's been there 2 years, and I've even said to them to the face, you've underestimated how clever he is, and they've agreed. But when he was in mainstream school, because obviously he's in a special school now, when he was in mainstream, he was assaulted. When he was in crisis, they looked at just the behaviour side. And I'm like, well, what about the emotional and the psychological side of this? They didn't care. They just didn't care. And that's the trouble.
Yeah, and then as kids get older, I work with autistic kids and teens and their people, whoever their people happen to be. Sometimes, luckily, it's teachers. But then as they get older, and naturally, developmentally, teenagers kind of start to, draw into themselves. And it's no different for a lot of particularly maybe like verbal autistic kids, right? And so then their communication becomes frustrating in a different way to a parent, right? It's maybe not like big outward obvious frustration, and sometimes it's even trickier to figure out what's happening and what's going on. But I think that sometimes for teenagers on the spectrum, my experience with my clients has been that people downplay even more so the fact that they might have strong emotions and strong feelings about what's happening, which I think is it does everybody a disservice.
Yeah. What do you think, Gilly?
I think it's also helpful to think about emotions, like the sensory component of them, right? Like we think about sensory overload in terms of external input, right? But then there's also the internal sensory component. Like for someone who's autistic, feeling angry could be like, a neurotypical person's anger on steroids. Like it's like completely overwhelming for them because the volume is just like so much higher on the emotion. And so it comes across like the wrong way. And then they get punished and then they feel ashamed. And it's just this vicious cycle.
Absolutely. Welcome, Joe.
Hello, Adam.
How are you?
I'm very well, thank you. I'm very pleased to be here and hopefully give some useful information based on my experience, mostly as an undiagnosed female until my mid-40s.
Yeah. What do you think of what you've heard so far?
Well, interesting about the anger side, you don't always feel it. And as I often used to say, I would explode at the person who broke the camel's back in my emotions. I didn't feel it, didn't feel like I could express it, and then it would just become too much, and then I'll be told off for overreacting.
Yeah.
And certainly in my time at school, the teachers certainly had very little or no knowledge of autism, and that's Peter, my budgie. He's got a lot to say on the matter, but I just sort of dealing with children. It is quite hard, and hopefully there's more diagnoses of females than there were. But it's very tricky growing up in a world which doesn't understand you, and as female teenagers, you don't understand everything that's going on around in the world, and hormones, I think, and why you have to be into fashion and makeup, and your interests don't tend to match everybody else's around you.
Yeah, absolutely. Richard, how are you, buddy?
I'm doing good. I'm a father of 2 autistic children, so I kind of have a different perspective. My son is high functioning, but for me, when I talk, because I've had several autistic people on my show, and I talk about how that with my kids, we actually embraced autism. And I started pointing out, if you look at people like Elon, if you look at people like Zuckerberg, they're definitely on the spectrum. I don't care what anybody says. So if I can take like my son has been fascinated with animals since he's been 2. He's graduating as a marine biologist because we said, okay, fuck what you're not good at. Let's triple down on what you're really good at and what you really love. So we tripled down on what he was really hyper focused on. And now he's becoming a marine biologist. So I think a lot of times people think, well, my kid, all he does is draw. How about we triple down on the drawing if that's what he really loves and that's what he's into, instead of putting him down? Let's amplify it a little bit more. And because that's where his heart and his gifts lie. That's like telling, Eddie Van Halen, don't play guitar and you're never going to make anything of yourself.
Exactly. Yeah. Nancy's put a really good question in the chat, and you know what? Because I've not heard from her yet, Ashley, what's the difference between a diagnosis and a label?
Well, you're gonna ask me that question. Well,
yes.
Like, I look at the labeling aspect as something that a lot of times, whether you're autistic or not, we wear it as a badge sometimes. But I also think that there is that negative labeling, especially when you're in a peer-to-peer relationship. When kids begin to label somebody as you're special or you're different, like in more of that negative connotation versus, okay, I've got this diagnosis, but I'm not my diagnosis. I'm not my label. So it really just depends on how you equip children, adults with the two. Are you going to wear the label like it is you, like it's your name? Or are you just going to say, yep, I've got this, but you know what? I'm going to, carve my own way, make my own path, despite what they say.
Yeah. I remember when our eldest, he was only about 9 months old, and obviously, as kids do, the first piece of paper is the walls, and and he started drawing, and obviously we thought it was just scribbling, and obviously we brought him away from it. And obviously he was very reluctant at first, but we just picked him up and put him in his walker, whatever it was, because he was standing at that point. And a few weeks down the line, because we didn't do anything about that, we looked at it. Me and Kerry just stood there and we looked at it, and we had to go on Google to have a look what it looks like. And it looked like London Bridge, what he drew at 9 months old, like a baby version of London Bridge, which I think was brilliant. So ever since, he just sometimes when he hasn't got his devices, he does become very creative, but it's getting that phone away from him that's the trouble.
So, I want to talk about something real quick, is because like I was diagnosed with ADHD as a child, but now I label myself, that's my superpower. So I took it from a disability to a disability. And I think if we could start thinking that way of how autism can be used as a superpower, I think we could change a lot of stigmatism.
Right.
Yeah, that's what our kids see him as, is a superpower.
Yeah, it's all a matter of how you use it. It's learning to use it. And I think that's the value of getting your diagnosis, or, getting it confirmed. That's what I call it with the people I work with. I'm like, your diagnosis, like at what point is something a diagnosis? I guess if it's really debilitating, right? But when you learn how to manage it, then, you could be more successful. And I think in general, people are just taking more of a turn into just embracing it. Like, I see people on social media wearing like ADHD T-shirts with like lightning bolts, and I think it's awesome. Like they want to wear the label. And I have ADHD, and I've seen also that people are saying just like, the phrasing of it. I remember when I was in graduate school, I was taught, you say children with autism because they are not their condition. And now it's more like I'm autistic, I'm deaf. It's a form of, it's an identity. And I think it's easier to live with it if you are proud of it.
Sorry, Nancy, go ahead.
The diagnosis does offer the opportunity for a series of solutions. It offers the opportunity for a community of people that can come together and help you. Diagnosis and prognosis are very different. So there is not a prognosis for a beautiful personality of a person. There's unlimited potential.
Yeah, and I think for some parents, receiving a diagnosis is daunting for them because of what we're, and I say we as a parent, like what we're bringing to the table and our own learning history of growing up in a different time where if you were identified as somebody who had something different going on, it was not really received well, right? And now it's really amazing to me to work in this field with parents who not only are embracing and advocating for their child and what they need, regardless of kind of what the label or the diagnosis is, but they're also saying, in community, I need you to step up too. You know, you say that you're going to allow my child to participate in this, allow my child, because it really is like, is my kid allowed or not to go to summer camp with other kids, right? But there still are some barriers, and these parents are beginning to say, that's not going to work for us anymore. Like, our kids deserve to be participating just like everyone else. And so sometimes the diagnosis helps, and then sometimes parents don't want it for that reason. I would argue it's more helpful for the individual to know what's happening, but that is an individual's decision too. You know, some people thrive knowing those sorts of things about their brain, and other people kind of go the other direction and don't really embrace it as much. It's very individualistic.
You know, I am a late diagnosed.
Mhm.
I'm late diagnosed autistic, ADHD, and all of my family, husband and 2 kids, are also. Well, our son was diagnosed very early. He was the beginning of our journey, but having the understanding, the compassion, kind of a new view and perspective of maybe what I went through, and overlaying that in what my children might be going through. And of course, they're at different levels of their education and in emotional development. But I can see where, you know, with my daughter in general, and Diane knows it, so that's wonderful, you know, to have the perspective. But I think what a special gift that I've been given to be able to follow, rather than follow while I'm leading, if that makes sense, rather than require them to be a certain way, and or have, you know, certain expectations that are not realistic to their needs and their desires. And because I think when we, like you said, Richard, when we follow those desires and those strengths, there's so much that can be developed and grown. And then we grow the challenges with the strengths. You struggle at math, but you're amazing at Minecraft, then start building math tables in Minecraft and start helping your children through their, you know, their desires and their follow those passions. And that, of course, coming back to the topic, will help to strengthen that relationship with them.
Yeah.
And now I have this opportunity to look at this child and say, wow, like I really see where me kind of watching and following it and being there to be the support and not like the rule of all rulers is the best thing I've ever done in a relationship. And I have 3 kids to kind of, you know, base that off, and it's the most amazing relationship.
Anyone else? Richard? Joe?
Joe is speaking of the beautiful strengths of autism.
Yeah.
Strengths of ADHD. I remember reading, I had to Google it because I'm like, what was that book called? This is like in the 90s-ish. And it was A Hunter in a Farmer's World. And the beauty of being a hunter in a farmer's world. It was just a concept that I was just like, oh my gosh, this is my son. My one stepson is definitely of that mindset, whereby everyone else is planting their neat little rows of corn and they're all following the procedures and everything else. And he's out, like he came back with a rabbit. You know, like that was literally the way that he was. His impulsiveness had to be harnessed and understood, not changed. Just like that moment, he's got a tattoo on his arm that says "Live and Learn." I mean, it's there for a reason, because he knows that sometimes the challenges in his life are not necessarily groomed in the proper manner to create success. We all have challenges. We all have choices. So autism is a wonderful, wonderful, colorful opportunity to look at life through a different lens.
For one, I've got this I'm ambidextrous. I think I should have been left-handed sometimes. My granny was, and I can't write joined up with my right hand going from left to right. I can write 14 different ways, but I can with my left hand, which is very, very useful at work. We're using a mouse with one hand and writing with the other hand. But it just brings a different way of thinking. And being scatty, possibly. Why could that be? Well, if I can write with both hands, that means that both sides of my brain are probably more operational than simultaneously than might be the norm. Pattern seeking, I've told people, I'm great at word searches. So what? What has that got to do with your work? I do information work. I can really get information. It's absorbing information. It's finding the abilities rather than saying, oh yeah, she just picks it up everywhere. Oh yeah, this, that. And my mum almost apologises by the fact that I fidget. And the fact that I come up with quiz answers so quickly, but that is my strength. I see patterns, I see colours, and yeah, all the emphasis. Oh, your writing's appalling. Oh, you're not very good at this. It's as you say, it's embracing the abilities rather than putting them down because they aren't the normal abilities, whatever normal is.
And you know, we're all built differently. Like, if I put a pickup truck on a racetrack, I'm not going to do very well. But if I put a bunch of timber in the back of a Lamborghini, that's not going to go very well either. So I think sometimes we just have to accept what we are and then crush our future instead of not saying what we aren't. We need to embrace what we actually are and then take it to the next level.
I think both of you have said, like, everything that you've said has been so critical, because thinking back to, you know, some families that I've worked with and some parents who really want their child to fit into a particular mold and meet particular expectations, kind of like what you were mentioning too, Sara. What I find then is that their relationship is not great. Nobody's happy. Nobody wants to share anything. It's really difficult for parents and kids then to, you know, come together and identify their common ground. There's always common ground. It just is it takes a little bit more gymnastics, I guess, to find it sometimes if you have a child with autism who, you know, has interests that are very different than yours. But I guarantee you can find something that you could be curious about in terms of their interests, how they developed something. How did you decide to use those colors together? They look amazing, you know. I think that curiosity really goes a long way in helping to build that relationship with a child.
Yeah.
To me, neurodiversity kind of feels like a different culture. You know, there's like with a different language. You know, if you don't speak the language, then it's going to be hard for you to understand, you know, the behavior and what you're trying to communicate. And then you might be labeled as odd, but you're not odd. You just, you know, think differently, or, you know, you function differently. And, you know, I think it's helpful for me to think of it that way. So, like, for example, you know, taking a French kid who speaks French and putting him in an American classroom, you know, and then saying like, okay, have at it. That's inappropriate because the child's not going to understand anything. Their behavior might be different just because of cultural differences and different expectations. And it's unfair. And I think it's, you know, it's the same thing for someone who's neurodivergent. You having these expectations that are the same as like the general population, it's not gonna work, and it's unfair to them, and it's a recipe for failure.
Yeah, it is. It's setting them up to fail, and that's the difference between the school setting and when the child lives at home. And this is the problem we got, because we got parents blaming school for not doing enough. Then we got, when the child's acting up, we got school blaming the parents. It's like, where's the common ground, and who is actually thinking about that child at that time when this tick for tack is happening?
Who
If that makes sense.
Who actually asks a child what they do or don't like, and then waits for the response to come in the way that is natural for the child to express it in the time that the child is happy to express it, whether it's looking at the camera, nice, clear expression, verbal expressions, all the natural body language.
Yeah. I agree.
And the words used.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
The somatics. Somatics is so powerful. When I lean back, there's a response from the other person. When I lean forward, there's a response from the other person. When we look at the somatic gestures of a human being, we're able to see that nonverbal response that's in all of us.
Yeah.
Do we understand it if we have seen it? Do we understand what is in somebody's words when we we haven't heard? Apparently there is something in the tone of voice, and everything comes together, and you naturally react. Well, I think if they sound angry, not quite sure what to make of the body language, what's the words. Oh gosh, they're expecting me to respond now.
Yeah. And this is the problem we had with mainstream, because our daughter, she's been diagnosed with anxiety, and she's only 11. But obviously throughout the school, she's been masking as well. But the school just said, "Oh, that's just anxiety." No, nothing about the masking. Nothing.
We need to find a way to teach as well as learn. Learn first, then teach. Learn to earn the ways that we can communicate our own expressions and our own feelings, so that we can be the example and the dialogue. I have many, many ways that I am able to keep myself in a constant way of ease and flow, and they are astronomically important to me because of the experience that I've had. I don't like to call it the trauma, I like to call it the experience. So for example, for me, I've got lip gloss. It's beside my desktop, and it's this lip gloss. It's not any other lip gloss, it is this lip gloss. This is my daughter's lip gloss. This is my grounding experience. It brings me so much comfort. Without it, I've got other comforts. I have many, many comforts in my life that bring me in the calm place where I'm able to easily communicate my feelings with others.
Yeah.
It's about finding what it works and expressing that. So what Joe said is so true.
Absolutely.
I haven't got my normal fidget toy, so I've taken my watch off, and somewhere down here I am just having to handle it and trying to explain at some meetings, sort of, I can see all your backgrounds. I get my screen turned off. Well, you looked as if you were asleep, especially if I shut my eyes. No, that's my way of focusing. Well, just turn your screen off.
Yeah. people would get upset with me. I remember during Zoom meetings, they would say like, Gilly, we can see half your head, but like, you know, it's hard for me to sit still, or I'm not comfortable, or I'm always sitting with my feet up, and, you know, or I'm leaning back. And I don't know, I always bond with my teen autistic clients about this stuff. Like, it's all nonsense, you know, like I'm present, I'm listening, I'm contributing, right? The rest is baloney.
Absolutely.
Well, I've now
Yeah,
got
what
to
I'd
put
like,
rest.
what I'd like, sorry to interrupt, go on.
I've got a foot and I've developed a foot rest for work because my feet tend to dangle too far off the ground. Just you know the lid of an A4 box of paper, and then an A3 one. I have now discovered the absolute joy of this. Apart from the fact my shoes come off very quickly within about 2 seconds, and I sit cross-legged on the chair, which you can actually move my feet along the slippery surface of the A3 box. I'll be sitting there focused, and my feet go.
Wow.
I have 2 blocks underneath my desk. I have 2 yoga blocks. They're soft, they're squishy, they're the right height, they're the right temperature. It's all of those things that we need to be able to create a comfortable environment. I mean, there's so many rules, and like Dr. Gilly said, like baloney. It's absurd. It's
absurd.
Rules
Yeah.
are there to be broken sometimes.
Yes.
Sometimes.
Sadly. Yeah.
Yeah, but do you agree that, especially in today's social media world, it's not the normies that are getting recognized. It's the people that are outside the box and different. So I think that now there's a bigger world out there, that the people that are outside the box are actually become more accepted than the people that are inside.
Possibly, I think amongst the neurodivergent community, autistic people will seem happy to connect with virtually any other autistic person that they are aware of. You've got things in common. You can discuss things. You can discuss your oddities, like, why have you got so many toys on your bed and you're an adult? Haven't you outgrown them? But you have a good discussion about your toys. And so I think that gives a strength that we've got something in common. We are not the odd ones, but we can now be ourselves. If we're stressed, we can have a right rant at the community, and the community don't say, oh! The community just piles in and shows sympathy. We can be ourselves.
Yeah.
I love that. And Nancy, I love your question. And you said something when you were talking a minute ago, like, how can we learn? How can we, share this with people? Everyone here is always invited, but I've been so happy and lucky that one day my husband just said to me, like, what would be a cool name for an event we could hold? And he said, and this was like 2 years ago, he said the 1 in 44 tour, because the number was 1 in 44 autism, and that was here in the US, Adam. But then, this year now it's 1 in 36. And so I started doing these events where I went and found the most excited, autistic advocates, people who were, triathletes, supermodels, like race car drivers, like these people who were making huge, huge, huge steps for their own lives and saying, I'm autistic and I'm doing this. And I really wanted to show and highlight all of these people. And it has just grown so much since then. Since then, we've, invited, service providers and performers. And we've been lucky enough to have Danny Bowman from Love on the Spectrum a few times at the events, and just amazing. So this August, we're going to do the next 1 in 36 mix again. And Diane, I'm so excited you're going to be a part of that as well with us. So yeah, it's so exciting. It's going to be 4 days, and each day we'll have a specific topic that we'll talk about. On Thursday, we'll do services and therapies. And Friday will be employment and hiring. Saturday will be sex and dating and girls and women in autism. And then Sunday will be advocate stories, which all of the events have always just been the advocate stories. So I'm really excited to kind of ramp it up and bring some more education. But I think that's how we can just start by, realizing, like you said, Joe, there's such a community, and we want to come together and we want to support each other. And I think we see each other's what people would call quirks. I remember my husband once saying to me, if we were rich, people would just call me eclectic, but now they just think I'm weird. I think he's still all of the wonderful things, but it just goes to show, like, the community that wants to come together, and Richard, parents that want to come together and just like support other parents, and it turns out to be, for a better lack of terms, this love fest of people that show up and just want to be there and want to help teach and learn. So thank you so much, Nancy. I appreciate that.
The sign in the back is beautiful, so it caught my
attention.
I tend to notice the sparkles and signs.
So I'll send, make sure all of you guys get all of the great information for that. We'll send you a special code for your viewers, Adam.
Is it in Canada as well?
It's virtual. Anyone can come, and everyone. It is virtual, 4 days. It's August 15th through the 18th. So lots of information to come, lots of time to plan and save the dates.
Beautiful.
Sounds good.
Now I have connections, so I'll try to get as many people as I can to watch. I'm friends with Mick Foley, the WWE wrestler, and Jim Carrey, and they have children with autism, so I'll try to get as many people to come to your event as I can.
I'm so honored.
It's quite interesting that so many people who got on with me thought I was just Joe, slightly different. It's sort of like seeks like. So many of them have, through some path or another, have turned out to be autistic or neurodivergent. Because you just accept each other's being.
Yeah, it is. Yeah. And that's the difference, in it, where people talk about neurodiversity, but they also look at neurotypical as well. So, yeah, it's just why. But what gets me is the communication side. How do we communicate with a child who's having a meltdown?
I would say you probably just you can't stop it, let it work its way through. Because if I'm having a Wright's drop, telling me calm down, just letting them get through it, start processing it, get to some kind of level plane, and then when you're at that level plane, you might from experience know what to do, or you can just give them time to, yes, shall we have a cup of tea now? Shall we sit down? Or don't give many choices. That's what I read. But if you're in it, you're in it. You're not going to, you can't control it. That's my experience.
Yeah. Yeah, because obviously with the kids we've got, with our daughter, when she's in crisis after having probably a day of masking and struggling, she just comes home and it's like Hurricane Tegan is home. She screams, she punches walls. She doesn't trash the place. She trashes a bedroom, and when we say, "Are you okay?" she just says, "Leave me alone." Or she actually started swearing now, which obviously I don't know why. I probably say school, but she hangs around with teenagers anyway. But yeah, with our son, he just makes a mess. Whether it's throwing Lego down the stairs, whether it's breaking stuff, he just does it.
Richard,
Yeah.
with your expertise in the military, a controlled blast? A controlled blast, right? No, but if you listen to what a controlled blast is within the military, Richard, what is that?
It's just everything is going hellfire and brimstone, but it's aimed at one thing, and the rest of it, it's quiet and serene around you. And sometimes you have to just let your kid go. Sometimes, like my son, he doesn't like to be held or kissed. So I know if he's having a meltdown, I'm not going to hug him and kiss him, but I'm just going to sit there next to him. And I'm going to wait it out. It's kind of like a controlled, what you were just talking about. Sometimes you just have to wait it out. And sometimes our kids don't need advice. They don't need to hear anything. They just need to feel that you're there with them. And that'll calm a lot more than saying, "Hey, why don't you calm down?" That's like me telling my wife to calm down. That never works.
Nope.
And when a lot of times when our son was having meltdowns when he was younger, we're really, really lucky. My husband had a sister with Down syndrome, so he already had special needs, like experience in his life. He had this compassion, and so he had also worked at group homes and had experience in what is it called, like in holding him safely, like safe restraint kind of a thing. But it was so helpful because then in that we could help him calm down. But we found that I would just sit and like take really deep breaths next to him. I wouldn't tell him, and then maybe years later, I remember him getting upset about something and me going down to check on him, and then to find him sitting there taking deep breaths on his own. And it was that I was like, oh my gosh, this really, really, it worked and it helped. And it was years of deep breaths, but it was great for everyone, I guess.
Modeling the information.
So
yes.
I'm sure that Ashley uses some of these techniques with her children because you've got a mitten full.
I think
He was in his room throwing stuff, so I went in his room. I started throwing stuff, and he just looked at me, and he just calmed down because he was like, "This is stupid. We're both just sitting in your room throwing stuff." But we made it a fun thing. So now whenever that happens, we just look at each other like, "Okay, we're not going to throw stuff because it makes no sense."
Yeah.
Meditation is a wonderful mudras. The mudras for meditation, because it gives you something to do with your fingers. It really helps that sensory aspect. And then there's the one mudra, which is very effective when you want to be left alone. Oops. Clear?
Yeah, what I do with my eldest is when he's in real crisis, I go for a cushion, and I literally just put it up. I'll literally put it in front of me, and I'll just let him punch it. I'll let him punch it, I'll let him kick it. If he wants to throw it and jump on it, I'm like, just do it. Just do it. Because I'd rather him punch and kick that rather than other people. So, yeah.
I think it's also important to remind yourself that there's like a physiological component here. Like it's a brain-based condition, and there's a reason that it's hard for people with ADHD or people who are autistic to regulate their emotions. It's because this kind of the same parts that are involved, the same parts of your brain that are involved in regulating your behavior are also the ones that are involved in regulating your emotions. It's about, people with ADHD and people who are autistic may feel emotions, more strongly or differently. And it'll be harder for them to suppress or control the emotional response. So if that's the case, it wouldn't make any sense to sit down and try to rationalize with them, because in that state, they're just not in a rational state. So I 100% agree. It's about just being with them and riding the wave of whatever they're going through, but also trying to make sure that they're safe. So I think that's maybe what you're doing, Adam, with the pillow, which makes sense to me. Having them just like not destroy things around them and make sure that, punching a pillow is not going to hurt their hand, but punching a wall will. So there's a balance here between teaching them appropriate coping skills and also making sure they don't get hurt. And I think just, one of the biggest, virtues that you can have as someone who supports someone who's neurodivergent is being patient, because with everything, with speech, with just understanding certain concepts, you need to be okay with waiting in silence. And the other thing is, I think, unconditional positive regard, just like always love your child.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, because obviously with our daughter, when she's in crisis, she just does her own thing. Obviously, I'm watching what she's doing, but when she's finished, because obviously she likes to do it on her own, I'm like, right, okay, fine. And she don't like being watched either, so I try and stay distant, but I'm still seeing what she's doing, but she don't see me. But then when I go downstairs and she's just sat there crying, I'm like, right, okay. I go to her and say, right, okay, are you okay? She screams, so I'm like, right, okay, I walk away. And then when she's finally ready, she comes to me and she literally sits with me and hugs me. So I'm like, brilliant.
Yeah.
So it's like waiting till they're ready to come to you. Because that's what I always think is, you don't go to them, they come to you. That's what you wait when they're in meltdown. But I'm probably wrong.
I mean, I think it's also an interesting conversation as a parent to think about and reflect, well, what do I do when I'm feeling in crisis? Do I want someone to come up and talk to me? Do I want someone to get in my space? And sometimes as parents, we forget that we also have that way that we prefer to be interacted with. We just assume that whatever we're going to do with our kid is going to be fine because they're the kid and we're the adult. And it doesn't work that way. And usually it extends the crisis situation.
I had a slightly odd thought. If people don't like being interrupted whilst they're communicating, meltdown and shutdowns are a form of communication. If you go in too soon and appear to impose your solution on them, then of course they're going to be upset at being, because they haven't fully processed what they need to process, even if you don't understand everything.
I agree, yeah. Right, I don't know what else to say now.
I like the word dissolve.
Yes.
Because when we're dissolving a state, when we're dissolving an experience, when we're moving from one time and space into another time and space, there's a change and there's a shift. And both faces, both times, both emotions are all perfect. It's an expression. It's like looking at a coloring from a 2-year-old. It's perfect.
Yeah. It is, yeah. Any final words before we wrap up?
I think children don't become adults just because they turn 18. They are left with the memories, good or bad, from their upbringing. So if you do have somebody 18 plus who is throwing an absolute why on earth they're doing that wobbly, this might just be they may bring a meltdown, but it's just they've got to, just like the child, be supported and be allowed to express it. I think I used to headbang a bit when I got very frustrated because I wasn't being heard. Childhood memories don't go just to the 18th birthday.
And my last comment would be to, as a parent, make sure you're taking care of yourself. Make sure that your cup is full, because you won't be able to pour into your child if your cup is empty. So make sure you have respite time. Make sure you're okay mentally, physically. If you're not okay, you're not going to be able to.
Yeah, really lean on your community. I agree, Richard. There's nothing more than, I think, when a family feels like an island that has no support around them, and they, that can't do anything good for them or their children or the welfare of the family moving forward. So I think that reminding parents that, one search on Google can bring you to the most, incredible amount of groups, communities, events that you can learn from, wonderful books and podcasts that you can listen to learn and just make connections. And I think that when I realized that there were so many connections to be made, we no longer, felt like an island in our own home. We felt like we have a community to lean on, and they in turn come to us and lean on us, and it's the most amazing experience. Thank you so much, Adam, for doing this today.
Can I recommend a podcast for you guys to listen to? It's actually run
this
by
one.
And Sarah's and Richard's.
Run by kids with autism. It's Autism Rocks and Roll. And he's had
I love Sam. Sam's one of my good friends too, Richard. That's great.
So if you guys would like to check out Sam, his mom, and their Autism Rocks and Rolls.
Yep, incredible.
Absolutely, yeah. Anything, Ashley?
I was writing that down.
She's not focused.
I was writing that down so I can look it up. No, I think to piggyback off of what everybody said is finding that support. Like I have a few ladies that I know that have been a part of the autism community and have worked with autistic kids for years now. And they've got programs and like connections, because that's huge, especially, it kind of reminds me of kids in foster care. Like once they age out, they really don't have anything. They don't have support. They don't have those therapies necessarily to keep them moving forward as now an aged out child. So it's the same for kids with autism. Everybody thinks, okay, you're 18, goodbye. Like now you're out on your own and the support kind of dwindles or it goes away. So having those connections in that support team for children and adults with autism, like as they age out, to continue teaching those life skills and to continue teaching just life in general, that makes a huge difference when you have that support team.
Absolutely. Yeah. Go on, Nance.
I completely agree. It's like being a part of an Al-Anon meeting or an Al-Anon community, even before or if or perhaps never your addict seeks help. You're the one that's seeking help. So a parent seeking help sets themselves up for success because there is that very distinctive gap when you are entering the ends of high school and the support's going to be gone. And it's terrifying. So creating that support system so that you're all ready for it is so powerful. Set yourself up for success.
Absolutely. What do you think, Diane?
I think it's really powerful. I think a lot of parents feel like they don't have the time to develop those relationships, right? Because it does take time. But I have seen parents who don't know each other at all come together, and someone will say, just, gosh, it was a really hard day. And someone else goes, I'm sorry, our morning was difficult too. And you can just see people's bodies relax, the tension that they're holding. It just sort of is like someone gets it. There's maybe not a solution to this problem, and there's a chance that it'll happen again tomorrow, but someone gets it. And those challenges are significantly different when your child starts to age out of, in the US, if you have an IEP, you're eligible for support through age 21 through your school district, which may or may not be, what's best for your kid. And then it's sort of like, right? And as a parent, to have that community makes a huge difference.
Yeah. Go on, Gilly.
Yeah, I think it's true for the parents and it's also true for the kids. Like, for example, I was running a social skills group, and I know there isn't a whole lot of, the evidence is mixed for social skills training, like in a group context, for kids with ADHD at least. And I had neurodivergent kids, so like kids with ADHD, autistic kids. And for me, it was important, like the therapy piece was important and practicing in the session and then working with the parents and all of that. But to me, the most important piece was the support, building, a support system, helping them learn how to make friends and actually make friends. And I've seen the expressions on some teens' faces who they've never been around another autistic kid, or they didn't know like another, what they even kind of looked like. And it was so much fun, to see like them laughing. One of them was talking about every flag, like the description of every single flag. And they're like, oh my God, I'm like that too. And so it's a lot of fun. And I think, we're social creatures, and especially like biological females, we have a social brain, and we just want to feel accepted and supported by others. And so for parents, it's important, and for kids too.
Absolutely. Yeah, well, I want to thank everyone for coming on, especially Richard, that's just disappeared. I ain't got a clue where he's gone. He's just sent me a message as well. What's on next week? It's a trigger warning next week, guys. We're talking about the manifestation of grief, which that's powerful. So, that's all I've got to say. Do you want to close us up, Ashley or Nance?
I won't be here next week, so I wish you all well. Such a good topic, and I know that you'll do just great.
Of course. Oh, I've got Ashley next week, haven't I? Oh, this is going to be interesting.
Wow.
It's gonna be it's the same
Well, I
exact.
can tell you that autism and grief. How, if you don't know how you feel anyway, how do you know how you feel when you're upset?
Exactly. Yes. Yes. Yeah. Maybe that'll get brought up next week. Who knows? Who knows? But anyway, I'll close this up, and yeah, we'll see you next week. So I'll end this now when it lets me.